Welcome into episode 477 of the Skate Podcast. I'm Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. Bridget and Scott, we were just talking before we hit the record button what episode number it was. And so I just thought to myself, the old Bobby Orr, Ray Bork, right? Just combine the numbers, and that's what we're at today. So there's a little Bruins tidbit to start us off.
The greatest D pair that any NHL team can put together as their all-time starting D pair.
Yeah. Oh, any team could put together. Yes. So what would you say? What would you say would be the all-time greatest fantasy defense pair you could think of? Bobby Orr and who? I mean, obviously Bork has a huge claim.
It might be Bork. To me, it's probably either Bork or Lidstrom.
Yeah, those are the two that were in my mind too. Yeah.
Like there's your top 3 defensemen ever. So
yeah. We're off and running. In the comments, give us your all-time fantasy D pair. I know there's gonna be a lot of Orr Bork comments, and justifiably so. But yeah, like we said, Lindstrom's an option, and I'm sure there's a couple others that people might think of as well.
I was trying to as I said that because I'm like I know that's the best D pair any team could have. I wonder who's even second. Like Red Wings could go Nick Lidstrom and probably Red Kelly would be their top 2. Canadians could go Larry Robinson and Doug Harvey. Like that might be number 2. I don't think anyone else would even really be close. At least not that I can think of.
Bruins can also go Bobby Orr, Adam McQuaid. If you really want to get.
That's right.
I'm just kidding. All right. Bridget and Scott. So rookie camp has taken place this week. They practiced on was it Tuesday and Wednesday? Or was it yesterday?
It was Wednesday, Thursday, and then they're traveling out to Buffalo Thursday afternoon. They're probably on, in the air as we're recording here Thursday afternoon ourselves.
That's right. So let's get ready to our opening shifts.
Bridget, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So me and Scott and Brian all were actually there on the very first day of camp. So we got to see guys with our own eyes. Freezer Minten was there. Locmelis, who Brian has been really high on, and you're not the only one, Brian, and that's actually where my opening shift is. He got a lot of attention at the first day of rookie camp ahead of the Prospect Challenge, and rightfully so. He's somebody that has noticeable offense when he's out there. Obviously, they weren't doing anything crazy, but it was funny when we request, for each of these things, we request players like, oh, I'd like to talk to this person. Very first person that everyone requested was Locmelis. And he has made some progress. You can tell from playing college to now. Obviously, there's the story from Worlds of him, getting experience against NHL guys. And Scott, was it you that asked him, what did Crosby say to you or whatever? And he said, oh, you're the next Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah. The kid's got jokes. That was that was funny because he also left it with a longer pause than you would normally get when you're clearly joking.
Well, no, it wasn't that he left it with a longer pause. I think he thought everyone was going to get it was a joke and nobody got it.
I saw people comment that they're like, how come no one laughed? And so because I asked it, I think he was looking at me and I was definitely chuckling, but silently. So you wouldn't have heard on the video, but I think he could tell, I knew it was a joke. So I don't know what everyone else was doing, or just didn't.
I'll tell you what it was.
People just didn't think it was funny, or
no, it was funny. But I'll tell you what it was. Accents, you have a hard time picking up sarcasm.
Yes,
and so his accent was kind of thick, and I was just trying to really listen in on what he was actually saying just to understand it. And then I'm hearing him say Wayne Gretzky, and he says I'm the next Wayne Gretzky, and I'm like, is he serious? Then he just goes, and he looks around and realizes no one thinks it's a joke, and he goes, I'm kidding.
I know he's Latvian and Krejci is from the Czech Republic, but I did comment, Scott, and maybe in person you picked this up similarly too, but he kind of had that Krejci sense of humor and just demeanor when he talks. I know people have kind of said jokingly, oh, maybe Locmelis is the next hidden gem like David Krejci, but on the ice, but off the ice, he kind of had a similar personality, ironically enough. So, likable player,
Yeah,
right?
he was funny. He spoke to us for a good 8 to 10 minutes, and he was definitely shocked, like when he saw how many people were there. He was like, "Oh, yeah, not used to that many media members being around him." And but he seemed pretty comfortable. And I did want to read a quote from Mouginel about him because Mouginel spoke as well on Wednesday, and he said,
Providence Bruins coach, in case anyone is
yes.
not 100% familiar with who Ryan Mouginel is.
And he's also going to be the coach for the Prospects Challenge, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so this is what he said about Locmelis, who I believe was the first person asked about. He said, he does a lot of things well. He's got a real good future. He has a great flair for offense. He's a great mind for it. I think they did a great job with him at UMass. And basically, as pretty much as glowing as you can be about a guy and you know, talking about him as somebody who actually really does have a chance to make it out of camp. And Locmelis said that's his goal and that, you know, that's going to be what he's working towards this week. And then once regular camp starts, he'll push even harder. But I don't know. He's kind of one of those dark horse guys that we've talked about, whether or not he actually pushes for a bottom six role this year, or if there's still time for him to develop, because obviously we mentioned fresh out of college, left college early as well, I believe after his sophomore season. So still young, still plenty of time to develop, but a lot of people saying a lot of positive things about him. And he certainly is one of those smarter, more skilled, smaller forwards. He was, I think, the second or third smallest guy at rookie camp, but a really smart player.
Yeah, definitely like an intriguing player to watch. I posted a Bruins notebook in weei.com, and you know, he was the lead part of it if people want to read through that. But yeah, so we'll get more into him. I'll just go to my opening shift, which is about probably the co-leader in terms of interest when it comes to Bruins prospects, taking part in rookie camp and playing in the Prospects Challenge. And that's Fraser Minten, who was a little bit of a surprise that he was even on this roster because he has played 25 NHL games. He's had a full season as a pro under his belt. He took part in 3 rookie camps for Toronto. So normally all of that would be like, oh, that player's like graduated out of this or is kind of like overqualified for this week. Minten was asked, you know, what led to the decision to participate. And he said, I got a phone call telling me that I'm participating from Don Sweeney. So,
which that did get laughs. That one got laughs.
You know, people just, hey, they'll laugh at the North American, not the European, to your point about, you know, maybe not picking up on the sarcasm right away. Mm-hmm. But Minten also said like he thinks there's good reason for him to be here because he is still new to the organization. He gets traded here in March as part of the Brandon Carlo trade from Toronto, and you know, is still getting used to kind of how the Bruins want to play. And this is, he was asked like, can this kind of be a springboard into regular training camp? And he said, definitely. And Mouginel said the same thing. And it absolutely can be like, get in kind of. Minten, I think, is sort of one of the de facto leaders of this group as they head to Buffalo. So kind of get to do that, be hopefully one of the best players on the ice, and, you know, just start to get a feel for how the Bruins want to play and carry that right into camp where he's one of these guys expected to make a real push to make the team out of camp. There's clearly some things he has to work on, especially offensively. Both Minten and Ryan Mouginel talked about that, so we can get more into those comments. But I think he's, along with Locmelis, the two most interesting players to watch. Those games are Friday at 3:00. I know is their first game, and then
I have it up.
They have an off day Saturday. They practice out in Buffalo, and then play Sunday at noon. So maybe
Friday at 3:30.
Friday at 3:30 against the Penguins prospects. and Sunday at noon versus the Devils prospects.
Yeah.
But I did want to read the numbers just in case people are tuning in and they want to, they might not know which guys to look for. Locmelis will be in 56, and Minten 93, which is his normal number. But yeah, 56 and 93 are two guys definitely to keep an eye on. And Brian, you, like we mentioned, you were also at those practices. And did you have anyone else you wanted to kind of spotlight, see, tell people, look for this guy?
Yeah, I mean, Cooper Simpson, Bruins third-round draft pick this past season. He's in the USHL. Is in where's he playing, Scott, right now? With is it Youngstown or?
I believe so. Let me pull it up though.
But he's in the USHL right now. He's a North Dakota commit, so NCAA is in his future as well. So he's not somebody that we're talking about like a Minten or a Locmelis or even a Riley Duran, who's somebody else that I wanted to bring up too, where their goal is to make Boston this year, right? Cooper Simpson he's years away, but he played on a line in practice with Dan Locmelis, who centered Simpson and Riley Duran. And so that's a line combination that you can probably expect tomorrow, Friday at 3:30 when they take the ice, at least to start with. I don't know why they would go with lines in a couple of practices, not to use them in the games. That seems like a tipping of their hand. And then Fraser Minten was centering Dalton Bancroft and Brett Harrison. So that will be your other top 6 line, or top 2 line, whatever, in the prospect challenge. I look at those lines, and to me, putting Locmelis with Duran and Simpson is putting those players in a position for them to kind of play off each other and utilize each other's unique offensive skill sets. Whereas putting Minten with Bancroft and Harrison is more of a, we're going to let Fraser kind of be the guy on that line, and we're just going to put him with some responsible prospects, but prospects that aren't really too flashy. Whereas I think the Locmelis, Duran, Simpson line will be a fun one to watch. So those also were the players that stood out to me at camp. Rookie camp on Wednesday was Locmelis, obviously Minten, and then Riley Duran and Cooper Simpson. So those forwards are forwards to watch for me this weekend.
Yeah, and tomorrow I'll probably tweet out the roster just so that people, if they want to follow along, can have the numbers in front of them from what we were given at practice the other day. Because I know, and Scott, this is streaming on the Bruins website, right, where people can watch it?
I believe so. In the past, it had so like years ago it was only on the Sabres website, but yeah, I think last year it was also on the Bruins website. But it's definitely useful to have those numbers because generally there's not play-by-play.
Yeah,
I think, if I remember correctly. So
I don't remember there being play-by-play.
Yeah,
I mean,
so you're
literally
if
you want, but
yeah, you're literally just watching and IDing the players yourself if you are. So
exactly. So, any other thoughts on some comments or quotes that we got from yesterday? Because I do feel like Mouchinel gave some insight about certain players. And Scott, you and Brian, I think you had more to say about Locmelis or Minten or just, in general before we move on.
Yeah, well, I was mentioning Minten's offensive game because he hasn't really produced a ton as a pro. Like you like his smarts, his defensive play, his size. He has a little bit of a bigger body, looks pro ready when he's out there versus some guys, including Locmelis, who looks smaller and undersized. But yeah, like I said, 25 NHL games, 5 points. AHL, I believe it was 22 points in 37 games off the top of my head. So you listen, Fraser Minten can be a really solid defensive bottom 6 center. Like that absolutely can be how he makes his career. The question is, can he also score at a decent rate? Can he be a third line center who puts up 45, 50 points? Not now, not this year, but down the road when he gets to, his peak as an NHL player? Or is he going to be offensively limited and more of like a 25-point guy where you're like, that's probably more of a fourth liner. So, I asked him about his offensive development, and at first I was worried like we weren't really going to get much of an answer. He said like, yeah, I just need to like score more goals, have more production. But then he did expand and said like, I think I'm pretty good in transition, getting from the D zone to the O zone. But I need to become more dangerous off the cycle, making plays in the offensive zone, using his teammates. So it's nice that like he clearly knows kind of what the next step is. Ryan Mougenel highlighted his offense as like the area where he still has to grow, and said he wants to see him basically like take more chances, not be careless, obviously, but be more willing to attack in the offensive zone and not always be so cautious and just kind of hang back as like the third man high. So that's definitely going to be something to watch. And it is one reason why personally, like I would not be super disappointed if Fraser Minten doesn't start the year in Boston, because I think all that stuff and trying to find more offense will be easier to do in Providence than in the NHL. Not to say it can't happen as part of his development at the NHL level, but it would be one reason. It would probably be the biggest reason if you see him in Providence as to why he's there.
Yeah, and I mean, what he was saying as well was the reason that he's gotten chances in the NHL already in Toronto and in Boston over other guys is that he's like his details and his defense make it so that he's less of a risk for you to lose a game off of some sort of rookie mistake that one of the younger guys makes. Like he's certainly seemed to be pretty cautious, but defensively sound in the sample that we saw him up in Boston at the end of the season. So just maybe risk taking is something that understandably he didn't really feel comfortable doing quite yet. Trying to basically prove his strength as somebody that you can trust. And Mougenel said that a lot of coaches reached out to him when Minten was traded, and everybody realized that Mougenel was going to be working with him to say, like, this kid is solid and he's a good guy. And, basically people were excited to see him end up somewhere where he was going to get a chance pretty soon. And I did ask him, what do you think it's going to take for you to make the team out of camp? And he said, I'm not worried about making the team out of camp. That, like, basically trying to take the pressure of that off of himself and saying, when I'm ready, and they'll bring me up, basically, which is a good strategy. It's a strategy I use myself in my business, like to not put extra pressure on myself and feel like, time is a problem. Could help them.
Just one comment quickly on Locmelis' size, because you guys bring it up. For those who haven't seen him on film or in person, obviously, because his access has been limited, when Scott mentions that he's a little bit more undersized, or Bridget mentions that, it's less in the sense of a Georgi Merkulov undersized. It's more along the lines of like a Matt Poitras, right? Like similar build to a Matt Poitras, less like a George Merkulov, who is like really undersized.
He's listed on the roster that they gave us as 6 feet tall, 177 pounds, which a lot of these guys are above 6 feet. Obviously, Poitras under 6 feet, but he just, I don't know. When you see him out there, some of these guys are pretty big, like Dalton Bancroft. People will see he's pretty big kid out there around him. Like there's just an obvious, more of a weight difference, I'd say.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like it's bulking up that he has to do. You're right. Like the height isn't really an issue. Like you can play at 6 feet. That's no problem. But yeah, he looks slight is how I would say it. So, and he said he has bulked up a little. So I'm sure that's, again, going to continue to be part of his process. Especially if he's in the AHL, like you have more time during the week between games. So that can be more time in the gym to bulk up, to get stronger. So yeah, that's, again, he's 21, just out of college. Like it's not the end of the world that he's still a little undersized. Like that's kind of normal for players that age. Like we said, like Fraser Minten's kind of the exception in terms of someone who at 21 or even last year at 20 years old looks the part of an NHLer, where you're like, oh yeah, like he's like, it looks like he's like in a man's body and not a 20-year-old. So
Yeah, he's listed as about 20 pounds heavier than Locmelis.
yeah, and I think the same height or maybe like an inch taller. Minten's I think 6'1", 6'2".
Yeah, 6'2".
Yeah.
But he said he put on 10 pounds in the off season. So he's gotten bigger himself. And it's just, this is one of the things about the availabilities, especially when we're talking to the younger guys, because this happened with Poitras too. And we're sitting there and people are like, have you gained weight? And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, I would never ask this question because it's so against like a girl's talk to each other. And it's like, how much weight have you gained? And I'm just sitting there like, I would never ask that, but people want to know. But I just naturally, that does not come to me in my mind as like, let's ask him if he gained weight. I don't know.
Yeah, that's funny. But yeah, I just wanted to give that color because for many Bruins fans, it's probably their first time hearing Locmelis' name over the last like few months, and certainly not everybody's seen what he looks like. So I just wanted to give that color when it comes to his size. But back to Minten real quick, Scott, to a point you made about not being too upset if they sent him down to Providence to start the year to work on his offense, because Adam McQuaid was asked about that too. And Minten appears to be such a responsible, defensively minded forward that coaches love about him, but sometimes it can detract from your ability to create offense. But in the AHL, Minten only has 37 games between the Marlies and the Providence Bruins. So that's actually a little bit less than I thought. He doesn't have that much AHL experience, to your point, Scott, where he still has some reps he could potentially benefit from down there as well.
Yeah, definitely. It was funny. He was asked about playing for 4 different teams last year, meaning Boston, Toronto Marlies in the AHL, and the Providence Bruins. And he pointed out that he also played for 4 teams the year before, because he played juniors. I think he got traded mid-season, if I remember correctly, and then got a few games with Toronto at the end, in addition to World Juniors. So he was like, yeah, it'll be nice to not play for 4 teams. But yeah, you're right. Like, it's not a ton of AHL experience. It was a full professional season, all things considered, last year, but going AHL to NHL in one organization, then getting traded, then AHL to NHL and back in another organization. Like, it was a lot of moving around and not a whole lot of consistency in terms of just like finding a role and sticking in one place for a while. So yeah, I think we all feel like of all these young players we talk about, maybe with the exception of Husnudinov, who has had more time in the NHL, and is not, or is waivers eligible, is not waivers exempt. Like, Husnudinov probably has an inside track to making the team. Of the rest of these guys we talk about, I think we all feel like Minten is probably the closest or has the best shot, just because it's easiest to see him playing a bottom 6 role and playing the kind of defense that we know Marco Sturm wants this team to play and wants to reestablish that identity. But it's not a given. And I just think like I don't think it would necessarily be a bad thing if Minten does see some time in the AHL, whether that's to start the year or maybe he starts the year in the NHL and then gets sent down at some point, which again, development, it has to be noted. It's not linear. It's not, oh, you make the opening night roster, so that means you should never go back to the AHL. Like, no, sometimes you get a look in the NHL, the team and you identify, all right, here's what you still need to work on. Here's where you're kind of struggling at this level. Let's get you back to the AHL. Let's work on it. We'll see you, in 2 months or whatever. Like, that happens all the time.
Yeah, I have a question for you too, and this is something that is just something to follow when real training camp starts next week. But the difference between where Fraser Minten seems to stand versus where Mount Poitras seems to stand in terms of, is one ahead of the other in terms of if there's just that one spot for a center to take, which one of those guys has an advantage. And then I don't think we know the answer to that right now, but that'll be something to follow throughout camp because they're very different style players. Poitras with a little bit more NHL experience, but they're so different. And maybe they play together, maybe they both make it, but I do wonder if it's one or the other. What are they valuing? What's going to set those guys apart? Is it just straight up one looks better in camp and that's it? Or is it they go for defense or they go for what have you? I'd be interesting to see how it plays out in the preseason.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think if one of them has a far better camp than the other, then you have your answer, regardless of play style comparison or whatnot. But I do think if all things are considered equal, they both have a relatively equal camp from each other. I do think that Fraser Minten, between his size and his style of play, I do think he profiles more appropriately as a third line center than Matt Poitras. And that honestly that kind of speaks to Poitras' offensive skill set. I think he would be better utilized in time, potentially in a top 6 role, maybe even as a winger, right? And maybe he gets that opportunity, Bridget, to your point, as a winger on the third line to start, and Fraser Minten is the center. But I just think when you talk about the profile of a third line pivot, you want a guy who can play both sides of the ice, well, all 3 zones really, and have an offensive upside of, let's just call it 40 points. I mean, Charlie Coyle was viewed as, for a while in Boston, as one of the best third line centers in the NHL. And he averaged 40 to 45 points in those years. Chris Kelly was a championship caliber third line center in Boston when he was here the year they won the cup. Now, he was traded midseason to Boston, but even the following year and the year after, I don't think he eclipsed 40 points once. And nobody looked at Chris Kelly as somebody who was not providing enough offense in that role. So I think if Fraser Minten doesn't have to become a 45, 50 point guy as a third line center, he can be a 35 to 40 point player in the NHL. Again, not necessarily this coming season, but eventually. And that's all the offense that we're really talking about him needing to hit. 35 to 40 points would be perfectly fine as a third line center if he's doing other things well. And I think he'll get to that level of offensive production if he utilizes his size and lives around the slot, lives around the front of the net. Don't try to be something that you're not, right? I think he does have good hands and a good shot, but when you have that size and you can play on the inside ice like that, you have to take advantage of it. And think back to, you guys remember the goal he scored in New Jersey at the end of last year where it was kind of a loose puck in the slot and he just kind of gained body position and just, a little spin around wrist shot. It's like, that's the type of offense I think that Fraser Minten can carve out for himself in the NHL. Be a responsible defensive forward, and then when you're in the O-zone, just use your frame and size and just go to the dirty areas. 35 to 40 points, and we're talking. So out of training camp, like I said, if Poitras or somebody else, Husnudinov, Locmelis, they just run with a training camp spot, sure. But I do think the profile of Bridget is the difference between Minten and Poitras in that role.
Yeah, I would agree. And I was just looking, because now it's like Anton Lundell down in Florida is kind of viewed as the premier third line center for the back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. He had 35 points 2 seasons ago, 45 points this past season. So again, all right around that neighborhood. And he's younger, so there's still more upside, but that's what he's done so far. Yeah, I'm with you. And I also think, if we were like, okay, how does this team start versus like, all right, if they have to make adjustments because they're struggling with something, I think it's more likely they start focusing on the defense and getting that down. And then, okay, maybe if we're not scoring enough, we have to bring up, maybe a more offensive player or two or open it up a little more. But like, it's going to start with focusing on the defense versus they're not going to come out of the gates being like, all right, we need to throw everything we can towards offense and try to score, and then we'll figure out the defense. Like, they've already told us which way they're doing this. That they're going to focus on the defense first, build that, establish that, and then try to add the offense on top of that. So that goes right into like your idea of like, yeah, Fraser Minten would fit that part more than Matt Poitras. And then if you get, a month into the season and Minten's not really producing much offense and maybe he's having some struggles and Poitras's gotten off to a really good start in Providence, like that could be the type of switch where it's like, well, we need a little more offense and Poitras's off to a really good start in Providence and we're going to bring him up and see what he can do. So I could see that as well.
And that's the benefit to these guys being waivers exempt. Like whatever the lineup is in October, it's okay. If one of them is down in Providence, it's not a big deal. You have the flexibility with these assets to bring them back and forth if you need to. And we all know that an opening night roster is not what you have even a month later sometimes, let alone halfway through the season or the end of a season. And Fraser Minten even mentioned that, I think, in that scrum, Scott. He talked about how, people put a lot of weight and discussion into opening night lineups, and that's just what it is. It's an opening night lineup.
Yeah, I mean, we saw like a couple years ago where Mason Lohrei had a really good camp, made a really good push, wound up being the final cut, and was only down in Providence for like a couple weeks before there's an opportunity for him to come back up. And then he stuck for a while and then, went back down again. And like, again, yeah, it is important to keep in mind because obviously, like everyone else, like we focus on who's going to make the opening night lineup. It's a fun thing to project and to discuss, but yeah, this isn't like fantasy football. There's not a limit on how many moves you can make. Like, you can, those guys who are waivers exempt, yeah, you can send them up and down, and it doesn't, just because they're not here opening night doesn't mean they're not going to be here at all this season.
Yeah, another person that I'm going to be watching very closely once regular training camp starts next week is Johnny Beecher. I'm just so intrigued as to where he finds himself and what favors he can do himself to keep his fourth line role after last season kind of seeming like he might be a little bit on the outside and kind of not solidified to keep that spot. So I think his training camp and preseason is going to be really important and in terms of battling for a spot against some of those free agents that we talked about that Sweeney's filling in that fourth line in the bottom six with in general, like Corrali and Janot and Eastamont. And then obviously the guys that were already there, like Kastelik and who's Nadinov, and we bring up Minten and Poitras. Those are all guys we'll be looking at for bottom six spots. And I think Beecher, we haven't talked about a whole lot, but just want to see where he's at. He said he had dealt with a little bit of an injury that he got fixed in the off season. Maybe now that that's cleared up, he seems to be a little bit more confident offensively, but he didn't do a whole lot offensively last year. And so it's going to be a kind of make or break camp for him.
It's you're right to bring him up, Bridget, because before rookie camp began on Wednesday, which I think it started around 10:45, but I got to the rink around 10:15 or so, and there was already a massive group of players having what appeared to be another captain's practice type scrimmage, and Beecher was out there. And obviously none of us have been too shy expressing our disappointment in him. I think at different times this offseason, we're all okay with the Bruins moving on from him. But so yeah, I'm pretty low on the play right now. But when I saw him in the captain's practice, it's his skating. He really is an unbelievable skater. I mean, he's a powerful skater, and he gets from point A to point B as well as anybody in the organization. But he just plays have historically died on a stick, and he needs to be able to utilize his speed. Having speed is great, but you got to find a way to utilize it properly and to your advantage and be a difference maker. And so until he shows that, and maybe an injury hindered him, right? But he has too much raw skating ability and talent to be a net negative or net nothing. And until he can prove that he can be a net positive, he's gonna be a question mark. But he has all the skating ability in the world.
Yeah, and has for a while, and that's it's why it's a big reason why he was a first round pick in the first place. It's why people remain pretty high on him, even when he didn't produce at Michigan right away. It's why he's gotten so many opportunities here. Why, if the Bruins do end up moving on from him, say he goes on waivers, it's why he may very well get a chance somewhere else. Is that combination of size, skating, committed defensively, wins faceoffs. Like, the foundation is that of a really solid, useful player. But yeah, I think at one point he went over 70 games without a goal last year after, a relatively hot start until he finally found the score sheet again late in the season. And it's like, in today's NHL, there's just not room for a forward who brings almost nothing offensively. Like, there's just not even on a fourth line. You got to contribute something. Like, it doesn't have to be double digit goals, but it's got to be like 6-7 goals, 11-12 assists, like pushing 20 points if you're playing a full season. And Beecher just still hasn't really shown the ability to do that.
Yeah, and when he first started, I remember he was dangerous on the rush. Like, he would get rush chances, and you wouldn't question where did the offense go, because even when he wasn't scoring, he was putting pressure and winning forechecking battles and setting up offense that way. And I just felt like that kind of went away as the season went on last year, which I don't know. He still on the team. He got the qualifying offer from Sweeney when free agency started, and he was an RFA, and he's back, and he's going to get a chance to make the team again.
All right, so these are all good storylines to keep an eye on. It's why we've had to fill content this off season with, especially the last 3-4 weeks, because we've had training camp on the horizon. And so we've talked about Poitras and Fraser Minten and Locmelis and Blumel, Husnudinov, Steves, Beecher, like all these guys that seem to be vying for these these spots, and there's only so many of them, right? Michael Esimont. So now we get to see how it all plays out, right? We get to see, because we've talked about also when you have waiver exempt players versus waiver eligible players, is it easier if they all have equal camps to send the waiver exempt guys down to Providence, give the waiver eligible guys an opportunity to start the year, see what they can do? But ultimately, maybe Fraser Minten doesn't win a third line center role and somebody else does. And maybe the Bruins waive Matej Blumel because he doesn't really stand out and nobody claims him and he ends up at Providence anyway, and it's all fine and everything works. Like, we have no idea how this is going to go, and it's why the next couple of weeks will be very fascinating. And it's going to start a week from today, because Scott, next Wednesday is the start of camp, but it's going to be off ice. So then Thursday is the first day that they're on the ice.
Yep. On Wednesday, players report, go through all their like physical testing, weighing in, all that stuff. And we will, as media, will talk to Don Sweeney and Marco Sturm that day. And then, yeah, like you said, the next day, Thursday, is the first day on ice. I am assuming it'll be 2 sessions, because that's what it usually is, or 2 groups rather, and each group kind of does 2 sessions. Like, they'll do like 40 minutes, clean the ice, come back for 40, and then there'll be a break, and then like the next group will go. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see, if anyone stands out early, what kind of combinations we're looking at, who's with who. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. Like, we talked so much about the guys, battling for jobs, and that is obviously one of the most interesting parts of camp. but it's also like it can be hard to judge goalies in camp, but how does Jeremy Swayman look? Because he wasn't here at all last year. It's Elias Lindholm. How does he look both in camp and in preseason games once they get to mix the veterans in? Because he missed most of camp last year and got off to obviously a very slow start. It's where's Mason Lohrei playing and how does he look? Like McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm, are they looking real healthy? Like, are they? You want them to look dominant out there? Are they? There's so much to watch even at the top of the lineup or the middle of the lineup. Guys that we know are going to be on the team. Um, I think Pavel Zacha remains a very interesting player who's, by the way, his name continues to surface in trade rumors. Saw Jimmy Murphy had another thing on on that rg.org mentioned that the Canadians have kind of checked in on Zacha, and as part of what Murph wrote up, said like the Bruins aren't shopping him now, but we know like if this season starts to go sideways again, the Bruins are going to look for opportunities to sell and cash in on some valuable chips. So I think it's a big season for Pavel Zacha, Casey Middlestad. We talked a bunch about like so many guys, so many storylines just up and down the roster.
Yeah,
Scott,
and who's looking like a leader and all of that. Yeah, there's so many different things.
guys, there are so many names floating around the ether regarding this team that I forget to mention the two names that we were only talking about last offseason trying to make the team. Georgi Merkulov and Fabian Lysell. Like those guys are still candidates too. And in captain's practice, I think I saw the forming of the new Bash brothers right in front of my eyes. Georgi Merkulov did a nice behind the back pass for a one-timer goal by Tanner Jeannot. Who saw that combination on their bingo card in captain's practice? Not me. You guys know. So obviously I'm tongue in cheek right now, but there's a lot to follow. And Scott, you mentioned like how the article says that the Bruins aren't interested in trading Zacha right now. It's like there's this undertone regarding the Bruins, regarding the Penguins with Sidney Crosby, another team that really wants the Canadians also want Sidney Crosby, and you hear like, well, not now, but maybe if things go south, and I get that, but also, and I encourage listeners to go to Daily Faceoff is a great website, and you can do a drop down box and go on every single team, and it has their projected lineups. And guys, I'm telling you, I really am telling you, there are a lot of teams I'm looking at where most people would say, yeah, they're going to be a playoff team. And I'm looking at their lineups and I'm like, they're not that much more of a sure thing than the Bruins or, like when the Bruins are healthy, like, man, like it's not inconceivable to see the Canadians have a setback. They can go backwards. The Settlers might go backwards after having success. Like there's no way of knowing. Like a lot of these teams, the NHL today, outside of the top teams, it's the top teams, and then it's just a bunch of parity. Yeah, some teams are marginally better than others, but like, well, let's just see what happens, right? Like the Bruins, like I'm not saying they're going to be buyers at the deadline, but they might not. They might be in a position where like they're just very much just like kind of quiet at the deadline because maybe they're in a playoff spot. So, and then like the Sidney Crosby stuff, I don't know if you guys saw the quotes from his agent, and it sounds like his agent kind of wants Crosby out of Pittsburgh because there's no chance for him really to win. I mean, I would say the Penguins are, to me, I think the Penguins are far worse, maybe not far worse, but they're worse than the Bruins. Like I look at the Penguins roster and I almost gagged. I was like, holy shit, like that's bad. I mean, and that's coming from somebody who's looking at the Bruins roster all off season. So I think I was surprised Sid signed his extension there because they have nothing going for them, right? And I think it's sad to see him waste his final years on a team that has no chance. So I wouldn't be surprised if Sid does maybe move at some point at the deadline. I know I just kind of was saying
Are
how
you
that's
saying to Boston, Brian? Are you saying
no.
he had
But
such a great time at Four Nations and
well, they've been linking
won
him.
and
They've been linking him to the Canadians, right? Like the Canadians desperately want him. He's from Nova Scotia. I could see a situation where Crosby goes to somebody at the deadline. No, it wouldn't be the Bruins, but I don't know.
crush my dreams like that.
Yeah, and everyone always likes to throw Colorado too, because
Yeah.
obviously he's very good friends with Nathan McKinnon, another Nova Scotia guy. So
I would say the Bruins, if they still had Marchand, maybe you could make that argument because Marchand's one of the other guys that he works
maybe
with.
then.
Yeah, because they work out in the offseason together too. McKinnon, Marchand, and Crosby, Nova Scotia guys. So, but yeah, we can't use that argument anymore. So.
Yeah, and
you all of a sudden look like you're just like in darkness.
Well, so the room that I recorded, and I had the curtains open because it was just really nice, and the sun was like perfectly lighting me, but it just like shifted a little, so now I'm kind of in the dark, and I don't know if I want to get up and close the curtains mid podcast. So
right,
I'm just gonna live with it. But
keep doing your thing.
We're almost done, right? I don't know what else we really had to talk about. I was considering.
I was so kind of as part of this discussion though about like expectations and playoffs or like where the Bruins slot in. I did see that Charlie McAvoy was on 32 Thoughts with Elliot Friedman. That this was part of the players like media week out in Vegas. Each team sends a representative, and they kind of make the rounds and they do a bunch of promotional stuff for the NHLs. And McAvoy was the Bruins representative. I think he's done that before too. He's been out there like at least once before, maybe twice. But so some of it, like McAvoy talked about his injury, stuff we've heard, coming back from that. And then also talked about like the Bruins having a chip on their shoulder and having higher expectations for themselves, which is something we've also heard from Pasternak, Zadorov. Here's a quote from McAvoy. He said, "We've got everything to prove. This is the first time in my career that we're going into the year probably not being a playoff team by a lot of people's metrics. We're a playoff team every day of the week in my mind. We have everything we need. We have more than enough on this roster to be that. So that's the goal. Our standards don't deviate regardless of what people think we may or may not be. We went out and got guys that are going to make us a tough team to play against. So I think we're going to buy into that as best as we can, and we're going to be a tough out." And that, again, like you wouldn't expect to really hear anything less, but that is kind of the clear message from the veterans in this team is like, we're not changing the standard. Like if people outside of this team want to say, oh, the expectation is just to improve slightly on last year, whatever, like that's not what they're setting in that room and in their comments to the media. Is like they're making it clear that their expectation and their goal is still to be a playoff team. And whether they truly believe that when they look at the roster and what's around them in that room, like we don't know, right? We can only go off what they tell us, but what they're saying publicly is that they think they have enough to at least be that.
Like here's an example, Scott. Like it's been the popular thing to do this offseason, locally and nationally, for people to look at the Bruins and be like, oh, how low are they going to finish? Okay. I get last year sucked, and I get that they're not one of the top teams in the league. Don't mistake what I'm saying here. But do you hear people talking about that regarding the Rangers? Like, I feel like people think of the Rangers, they're like, yeah, they're still a playoff team. Well, here's the Rangers lineup. Artemi Panarin. Okay, let's wash him with Pasternak, okay? Vinny Trocheck is their these are the line combinations, but they have Vinny Trocheck and Alexis Lafreniere. I mean, Lafreniere has been a decent, middle six forward. He's nothing crazy. I mean, you can wash him out with the geeky, right? But you have Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere, Will Cooley, who we love, like we think he's a bright future. JT Miller, who's great, and then Mika Zibanejad, who has a ton of skill, but he's dropped off lately. Here's the Rangers' bottom six: Gabe Perreault, former BC Eagle, very much unproven in the NHL. UC Parsonen, Johnny Brodzinski. Their fourth line is Adam Edstrom, Sam Carrick, Taylor Radish, and their D-core is Gavrikov, Adam Fox, Carson Soucy, Will Borgen, Vakanainen, Braden Schneider, and then in goal they obviously have Shesterkin. But it's a fine lineup that could very well be a playoff team.
Well,
But
you missed Matt Rempe. That's the missing piece in this lineup.
But like I look at that lineup.
It's extremely top heavy. Like
yeah,
especially that defense, the way that falls off after that top pair. Like, woof.
But no one, but no one's talking about the Rangers. How low are they going to finish? It's like, I don't know. It's this weird thing where I just think people like to pile up on the Bruins because the Bruins are so fun to hate, even when they're good. And again, don't mistake what I'm saying. I'm not saying that the Bruins are a favorite to make the playoffs at all. But this whole narrative of like, who's going to finish worse, the Bruins or the Penguins? It's like, I don't fucking know. I mean, the Bruins have a lot more pieces, I think, than the Penguins do. I mean, yeah, they have Sid and Malkin and Letang. I mean, their combined age is like 110. I mean, like they have nobody beyond them. Like the Bruins have us with health. The Bruins have more pieces, and I do think that they're going to enter the season, ready to go. And I think there's going to be some teams that don't. So I get it. I get the pessimism around the Bruins. I understand it, but I think they had one bad year. I think people are overstating just how bad they might be. I'm not saying that they can't have a bad year, but any team can have a bad year outside of the top teams. So there's a lot of teams I think that could be a playoff team or not be a playoff team. The Bruins are among them, but not all those other teams or people are talking about how low are they going to finish. So
yeah, I mean the Rangers definitely shouldn't be getting a free pass on this. The same
that's
kind of conversations the Bruins are having.
That's just one example. I can pull up another, 8 or 9 teams that are kind of similar.
That's a good one because it's another original 6 team. It's another market where the fans don't really accept losing. It's teams that generally are expected to make the playoffs that both had sells last year. And the Rangers did a weird combo of selling and buying because they got JT Miller. I don't know. Definitely weird years for teams that are normally more steady. So I think it's a good comparison, and I wouldn't say the Bruins roster is necessarily worse than that roster, mostly because I think the defense is deeper, and I wouldn't say the forward group is deeper necessarily, but maybe just a little bit more balanced from top to bottom.
Yeah, it's comparable, right? But one team's a lottery team in people's eyes, and another team is just not talked about. It's I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like there's so much parity in the NHL these days. It really isn't. It's whatever. It's just an observation.
Yeah, and I also think people probably give the Rangers more of a benefit of the doubt because they hired Mike Sullivan, and I think people just assume that, oh, Mike Sullivan knows how to coach a winner and will have the Rangers back on track, and they don't know about Marco Sturm. And to an extent, that's fair, but it's like, but that's not guaranteed. Like, we see coaches who, in their first opportunity come in and get the best out of a team. Obviously Spencer Carber in Washington being a great recent example of that. And we've also seen Mike Sullivan not be able to win when he doesn't have a good enough team the last bunch of years in Pittsburgh. So, yeah, but you're right. Like
their goaltending too is good. I mean, Shesterkin and Quick is a good combo, right. No doubt,
for sure.
But anyway, it's just my point is, there's only so many things to talk about all summer. I get it, right? But let's just see how it all unfolds, right? I like to go into a season more so. Like again, I brought up the Penguins. You look at the Penguins roster; it's very fucking clear. Like they don't have anything. They have Sidney Crosby, who's 37, an aging Malkin, and Chris Letang. I mean, it's not great. They're, the San Jose Sharks, right? I'm glad they have Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith and Michael Misa. I'm excited for their future of their forward group. Their defense is an AHL defense. Although I do think they just got Dmitry Orlov. So, but anyway, I'm just saying, there are certain teams I think where it's very obvious that they're bound for the bottom. I don't think the Bruins are as obvious, and as people have been painting them. So that's that.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys had anything else you want to touch on. One thing that I've been meaning to just try to mix in and mention, because we've talked about a couple of these rankings of prospect pools or pipelines. We talked about The Athletic, Daily Faceoff did this, and I think they both had the Bruins right around like 20 or 21 now. Elite Prospects has been rolling out their ranking, going team by team, I think like one a day. And they recently got to the Bruins and had them 17th. Elite Prospects at this time last year had the Bruins dead last. So that is a 15 spot jump. Again, we've covered why obviously James Higgins is the single biggest reason, but also the additions of Fraser Minten, Will Zellers, Will Moore, your second round pick. Adding all of that to the prospect, to the pipeline. Dan Locmelis taking a step forward. But beyond where Elite Prospects had the Bruins ranked, what I thought was super interesting about this was where they had Dean Letourneau ranked, because they still had him as the Bruins' number 2 prospect behind James Higgins. And the write-up was...
What was their like top 5 to 10?
So they had 1 James Higgins, 2 Dean Letourneau, 3 Fraser Minten, 4 Will Moore, 5 Will Zellers, 6 Fabian Lysell, 7 Dan Locmelis.
I was talking to Bridget was with me when we were talking with Mark Diver and Robert Chalmers at the rookie practice, and Robert was mentioning that a lot of people are viewing Dean's sophomore years like his freshman year, like it's kind of like in the sense of everybody knows he was in a spot he shouldn't have been last year, and there's a lot of people out there in the prospect world that are kind of just ignoring that season because it was kind of just a premature situation, and treating this upcoming season as one to truly kind of judge him off of from a potential standpoint. It's an interesting dynamic with the player. Obviously, Will Smith went to the NHL last year and opened up a spot in BC's lineup, and then Dean takes not Will's spot in the lineup, but his
he comes
body.
to fill a hole. Yeah,
exactly.
Like there was room for him. Decisions made for him to go there. I'm totally for treating this as his first year, like freshman year, and last year as kind of like a year maybe he should have been in the USHL or what have you. Yeah, another year of development pre-college, but I just don't know if I see him right behind Higgins. I feel
that seems high.
Well, and to be clear, like just because he's ranked second doesn't mean he's right behind Higgins. Like numerically, yes, but like obviously there's a huge gap there from 1 to 2.
I think Fraser Minten, just from what he's shown so far, should be number 2.
Well, but I guess if you still believe in Letourneau's upside, like I think you can make a fair argument that because he's such a wild card and such a project with like so much runway ahead of him, if I don't know that I would make this case, but if you wanted to make the argument that Letourneau still has more upside and a higher ceiling than Fraser Minten, I think you could.
But he
certainly has a lower floor as well.
Yeah, I was going to say he also certainly is a lower floor, bigger risk kind of player. And is Poitras just not included in this?
Yeah, he didn't qualify as a prospect anymore by their definition. But yeah, I mean, I would not completely ignore Letourneau's freshman year. Like I wouldn't just wash it away and give him a clean slate like that, because I don't think you should ever ignore any year in a player's development. But yeah, like this upcoming season should have been his freshman season. He should have been in the USHL last year. So that's fine. Like if he does take a big step forward and he looks a lot better, then yeah, totally fine to be like, okay, this is where he should be. Like this looks like the right development path. Whereas last year was just like, wow, he really just doesn't look ready for this level. That said, like I said, like I'm not completely just ignoring it or wiping it away though. I still think there was, there were things there to like be worried about last year, and I don't, even the people I talked to who said he probably should have gone to the USHL, I don't know anyone who was predicting him to like only put up 3 points. Like everyone I talked to still thought he was gonna produce and be like a solid third liner. So there was still, even if you came in with lowered expectations, like there was still a lot of disappointment in what he did last year.
I'd be really interested to hear what Greg Brown has to say about the outlook for this season. Because, I mean, they've gone through practices at this point. He's got a chance to look at the team. College hockey starts before the regular season of college hockey starts before the regular season of pro hockey. So that'll be here before we know it. I don't know.
October 3rd.
Is it a possibility for us to talk to Greg Brown on the podcast officially before the season? If not, I'm sure you and I will both have conversations with him in our capacity of covering college hockey, but I don't know if we'd be able to get him on because he's somebody that I mean, for all of the Bruins prospects that are going to be on his team this year, there's a lot to cover.
Yeah, I mean, BC season, I believe, starts on October 3rd against Quinnipiac. Sorry, Scott, Quinnipiac. So we'll see if
not how I said it. That's fine.
It was even worse than that. But Brian, guess what? So you know how you're talking about, you start out this podcast talking about the Bobby Orr Ray Bork episode. Well, I was gonna just bring this up to mess with Scott again, but I'm going to the Bork Foundation Gala on September 25th. And
wow,
that is how you pronounce it. So
Gala.
The gala. And I got my gala dress in.
Gala dress.
I think he called it a gala.
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 All right. Yeah, definitely watch BC this
that's
year.
The French pronunciation.
What, gala? No.
Gala.
Gala? Oh.
Just because it's Bork.
Okay. All right. Sure. We don't know. None of us know what we're talking about.
All right. Sometimes Scott's jokes have the Locmelis effect where it just takes a while for us to get it. But the content's great, though. The content's great. All right, guys. Let's wrap this up. I for one, am pumped that we no longer. I think this is our last episode of the year without at least having some real-time hockey to respond to, because we do have the prospect challenge this weekend. So at least we have that, and the long summer is finally fucking over.
And our next episode will be our. Obviously, we've been doing a lot of training camp previewing, but that will be our official training camp preview. We'll go through the biggest storylines, biggest players that we're interested in watching. And that'll be early next week, along with the any takeaways we have from the Prospects Challenge.
Alrighty. Well, thank you all very much for listening. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.